Howdy Smite fans, J-Mac here. Week 2 of Phase 3 of the SPL is all wrapped up, and we had some pretty good sets this weekend. Believe me, you're not going to want to miss out on some of the momentous occasions that we had throughout. So, let's go ahead and take a look back and see what those moments were in this week's episode of the SPL Weekly Recap. Well, starting off our Friday, we had the Olympus Bolts against the Valhalla Valkyries. The Valkyries' double assassin comp caught the Bolts off guard, and as the games are pushed into the late game team fighting stage, the constant picks that the Valkyries found allowed them to knock down the Olympus Bolts in just 2 games to take a 2-0 victory for the Valhalla Valkyries. Next up was the Solar Scarabs against the Camelot Kings. While the early game started out well for the Scarabs, the Kings were able to choke the farm away from the Scarabs at just about every point of the game. Kills aren't on the mind of the Kings as they control all the objectives and push for the 2-0 over the Scarabs. Oh, and genetics, that Horus ult at the end of game 2 is just gross. Stop it. Our Saturday opened up with the Tartarus Titans against the Valhalla Valkyries. Early game for both of the games remained dead even for about 15 minutes, but the Valkyries continued to overstep in the late game, and the Titans had perfect punishments to combat them. A few too many late game picks led to the Titans to sweep it away with a 2-0 victory over the Valks. Then, after that, we moved on to the Oni Warriors and the Jade Dragons. Game 1 was a clean and clinical game for the Dragons. Scream dictated the early pace, and 2 picks by the Gold Fury near the end of the game led to the Dragons taking game 1. The role swap came through in game number 2, and the Warriors had none of it. Cuvo perfectly maneuvered with the Hunbatch jungle to punish anyone who didn't have their beads off cooldown, pushing the set to a 3rd game. In that game 3, Dardas and Nika were able to dominate in their respective lanes, and the 2-tap Kabrakan late game led the charge for the Oni Warriors to dethrone the Dragons and cut off their win streak. The Warriors took the set 2-1. Well, our triple header Sunday led off with the Olympus Bolts and the Atlantis Leviathans. Game 1 was duo pressure that led into mid lane dominance for the Levi's as Zapman and Shinto commanded the first game. It was looking similar in game number 2, but patient play and cautious team fighting netted the Bolts a sneaky win in that game. Game number 3, a low kill objective game that the Leviathans managed to squeak out and take the set 2-1. And following that was the Camelot Kings up against the Oni Warriors. Game 1 can be summed up to Cuvo Fred running the show on Pele with Dardas following suit. Game number 2 was a fast stranglehold in duo with Netrua taking charge from that lane to push the Kings to a tied set. Game number 3 was a bloody first 25 minutes followed by a grueling 10-minute fire giant dance that only continued to benefit the Kings. Once the actual fight broke out, the Camelot Kings came on top for a 2-1 win. And then to close out our week was the Jade Dragons against the Tartarus Titans. A rough early start in game number 1 slowed down the Dragons, but once the late game comes around, Pagon's damage output in lockdown was too great and the Dragons took the first game. And then game number 2 was a run it down and never stop Dragons game that led them to finishing out the set 2-0 for the win. And there you have it. With week number 2 done, we had a couple of nice little upsets for the Valkyries getting a win over the Bolts, the Dragons being dethroned by the Oni Warriors, and the Camelot Kings making some nice returns as well. We can take a look at the standings to see how everything has shaped up for this week and now get ourselves ready for our next week of play. If you missed out on any of week 2 and want to go back and watch some of these momentous occasions, go ahead and watch it over on our YouTube channel at SMITEVod. Catch the behind-the-scenes content over on youtube.com/SMITEPro, or you can tune in live right now as we kick off week 3 of Phase 3 of the SMITEPro League.